Welcome to the Prosperity Podcast for entrepreneurs who are ready to drop the hustle and earn more. I'm your host, Danielle Amos, business and success coach, certified Proctor Gallagher Institute consultant, and lifestyle entrepreneur. Each week, I'll bring you amazing entrepreneurs who have built wealth, harnessing the power of their mind. Prosperity and money are truly about energy, and I'm on a mission to help you create financial abundance through the power of thought. It's time we started normalizing conversations about money and create the wealth that is yours. Are you ready? Let's do this. Welcome to episode 178 of the Prosperity Practice. My name is Danielle Amos, and I am your host. This is the Prosperity Practice, the podcast that has you living your most abundant life. Today, our topic of conversation is courage. It takes great courage to make a move, to be willing to bet on yourself when perhaps the resources or the evidence of your success is not there. I know this feeling, and I also know for sure what I know to be true is that the universe rewards courage. Think about a time in your life when you didn't have a guarantee. Perhaps you had no choice but to make a move. This is how I was at the beginning of my business. And I've recently had conversations with other leaders in this space, my colleagues, women in my mastermind, who have achieved incredible success in their life. And they hit sort of a plateau because they stop making courageous moves. It's like they don't want to disrupt what good they've manifested so far, because what happens if they make a move and it fails and they lose it all? I get it. I've had this thought, and I actually believe that it's harder to make a move when you're comfortable. And yet, the universe rewards courage. I remember early in my business earlier in my career investing, putting over $30,000 on my credit card when I was already so in debt. It made no logical sense, and I had no idea where the money was going to come from. And yet I was willing to bet on myself. I was willing to make these courageous moves. And the universe rewarded me. It rewarded me from making a decision from the goal achieved when I had no idea how it was going to come together. I just didn't give myself an option of failing. I knew the only way I would fail would be to quit. And I knew I wasn't going to quit. So how do you bring back this courageous energy to your business now? Perhaps you are in a spot where I was at the beginning, where I didn't have anything to lose. So I just kept making courageous moves that weren't logical because there was nothing to lose. Or perhaps you are where many of the leaders are that are in my world right now, and they're talking about deciding to make big moves, but they're comfortable and they feel sort of stuck. So wherever you are, this conversation is for you. What does it take to make a bold move? To be courageous, to say yes, and to take risks? What does it take? Well, I'd like to refer to my mentor, Bob Proctor's book, which actually I have a free download for you, a gift for all of you listening. If you go to the show notes, there'll be a link for you to get a PDF of this book. It's really incredible. You Were Born Rich. In this book, Bob has a chapter called Risk Takers. And he said, and he talks about how you'll never see anyone who receives anything of greatness in his or her life without first taking some kind of risk. Risk. The ability to have courage to bet on yourself, bet on the program that you're considering to invest in, the mentor. Really, it's all about you. And he talks about in this chapter how, from the outside, an investment like that could look risky, quote unquote, risky. The outsiders would say, okay, that's not logical for you to invest $30,000 in this. And here's the thing, from an outsider's perspective, looking at my bank account, sure. However, my knowing, my level of faith and understanding in the universe is what allowed me to take that risk. And I didn't really know it. I didn't really believe it at the time that the universe was all abundant. Abundance was my birthright, that there's an infinite supply. I didn't really believe it. I didn't really believe in myself. However, I believed in my coach. I believed in Bob Proctor. I believed that he knew what he was talking about. That belief gave me faith. And I thought, if I could just do what they say, and I believed that I could do that. I knew that I was smart and I could take direction. Now, I didn't always do what I knew to do. And that's what our program, that's what we do in our community, is keep you accountable. And accountability is your insurance against failure. So although I didn't necessarily have the belief or faith in myself, others had it in me and I had it in them. So essentially, you probably heard this before. I borrowed their belief. And so I believe that courage, it's not like you jump in and close your eyes and wish for the net to appear. It's that you jump in with your eyes wide open, your heart open, knowing that the net appears. And if you got to borrow someone else's faith that knows that, someone else's understanding that knows that, then do it. I also have an incredible belief in decision making. I believe that every decision I make is the right one. And I recommend that you have that as well. I also believe that there's no way I can fail. There's no way that I'll be a failure. The only way I'll fail is if I quit, and I know that I'm not a quitter. And so if I make a move and there's lessons, that's the cost. And let's say the 30,000, I quote unquote, lose that. That's not failing. It's a $30,000 lesson that I've acquired. And now it's my responsibility to incorporate that lesson into my business, into my life. And I learn, I get back up, I learn, and I take action with the same faith, the same courage. So why is it then that a person finds it more challenging to move when they've experienced success? And I was just having this conversation with one of my clients this week, and she feels it. And this is not the first time. Like I said, it's come up in our community with very successful people. I think it's the perception of what they have. And so it's this idea that if they make a move and it doesn't work and they lose everything, but like, is that true? So even if you consider the worst case scenario from making a move, the worst case scenario, which I don't believe you'll ever allow to happen. I know I wouldn't. Take a moment just to consider, for like just a brief moment, like 2-3 seconds, no longer than that, because we know that 17 seconds leads to another 17 seconds of a thought, and you'll attract more to worry about, for example. Just consider the worst case scenario for a second. and poke holes in it. Acknowledge that it's that worst case scenario you've maybe rolled around in your mind, then poke holes in it. Like, would you be okay if that actually happened? Could you see yourself getting back up, recreating your wealth, your business? Yeah. Yeah. And then I don't even think I'd ever allow that to happen. So the worst case scenario, now you've rolled it around in your mind for a few seconds and you see that it's like not that bad, that you would actually be okay. And I think this is valuable work. I wouldn't stay there, and I think it's valuable work. And then look at the best case scenario, like not the logical outcome of this move or this decision, the absolute best case scenario that you can see. And notice how the worst case scenario and the best case scenario, you can imagine both of them in your mind. Would you agree? And the truth is, both of those visions are possible. You can see them on the screen of your mind using your imagination. And the truth is, every scenario between the worst case and the best case is available to you. So there are probably infinite outcomes from this decision, and all of the outcomes are available to you because you can see them all in your mind. Maybe not at the same time, you'd have to do some thinking. So wouldn't it be wise if what you focus on grows? Wouldn't it be wise to let go of the worst case scenario and let go of the worry and focus then on only what's possible? This is what I believe risk takers actually do. They make the move, and then they use their will muscle and their imagination to keep themselves in the vibration of possibility and potential. And by doing that, they attract that, the best case scenario. They attract what they focus on. Now, they also have an understanding of how all this works, how thoughts become things, how what you focus on grows. Either it's a conscious understanding or they're an unconscious competent, meaning they don't consciously know what they're doing. They just have this habitual way of being to focus on possibility. And, you know, the outside world might call them lucky. There's no such thing as luck. They're not lucky. They have an understanding, or they've been programmed to focus on possibility, potentiality, rather than the worst case scenario. So here is the important piece for you. I'd like you to consider, what is a decision that you know that you'd like to make? That if you had all the resources, all the money, all the people, you would jump in. And perhaps you're waiting for all of those ducks to line up. Well, let me tell you something, they don't. If you're waiting for your circumstances to change before you make a decision, you'll be waiting a long time. What if the decision comes first? The courage comes first. You go first and the universe follows. You make the decision and you act from that best case scenario, and you hold the image of what that outcome gets to be. So think about that decision or that thing you've been wanting, and go take action towards it. Go invest in the program, in the coach. Go see your dream house, drive your dream car. Go contact that person that you'd love to work with, this dream client, or go do the thing with an understanding that it may look risky on the outside, but there's no such thing as risk when you understand the laws. And if you feel wobbly in your decision, use a tool that I use, which is I take pen to paper and I write about the outcome I prefer. And I write and write and write. And every time I wobble, I take my pen to paper again to keep my mind focused on the outcome I want. Writing causes thinking, and we think in pictures. If I let my monkey mind run wild, you know, it's not as easy to control. So the writing is a huge tool we use in our community. If this podcast helped you, I'd like to hear from you. I'd really like to hear from you. Share your ahas. Send me questions on Instagram. In fact, I'll be going live to record an Instagram show based on your questions. I'll put the link to add your questions and I'll answer them on this upcoming podcast. You go first, the universe follows. And for those of you in our subscription, I've got some behind the scenes conversation where I go deeper into this, and it's just for you as a subscriber. You'll get access to that. So I'm speaking now about how, it's common for people that have had success to be afraid. And I know that you'll really enjoy it. So thank you for being here. Expect abundance.